I was 72 when I finally sat down to write this. My hands shake. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. But my memory of that day is sharp as glass, lodged beneath the skin. No matter how many years pass, some wounds don't close. They learn to live with you. My name is Kayla Lynn McCarthy, and once a long time ago, I was chosen. You were chosen. Kayla, he said, his breath thick with wine and something sourer. The Lord picks his lambs one by one. Then he locked the door. I was 11. He said I was special. That purity needed to be broken before it turned rotten. I begged him to stop. He covered my mouth, called it a blessing. That room was never meant for prayer, not the kind a child should know anyway. I didn't write this for pity. I don't want your sympathy. I don't need your prayers. I wrote this because too many kids are still being told to stay quiet. Too many are still being called liars, troublemakers, sinners, while their abusers stand behind pulpits and praise. If you're reading this and you've lived something like I did, stand up, speak out. Don't wait to be believed to start telling the truth. And if you believe us, then don't scroll past, don't stay quiet. We lived in Eden Haven, where folks didn't talk loud unless it was to say amen or hallelujah. And you better not take the Lord's name in vain, not even once. My mama had a Bible so worn the cover had curled like dry leaves, and she still pressed it to her chest every morning like it could hold her heart in place. She always said no one stands closer to God than Father Donovan. That man breathes the word, and everybody believed it. Old Mrs. Langley once said her grandson got cured of his seizures after Father Donovan prayed over him. My Uncle Silas swore he saw rain fall over his cornfield the very next day, after tithing double at the Sunday service. And when my daddy died in the factory fire, Mama looked Father Donovan straight in the eye and asked him if she'd done something wrong in God's eyes. He just touched her forehead and said, "The Lord tests those he loves, my child." She never cried after that, not once. I was a good kid, teacher's pet in Bible class, learned all the verses, could recite Luke and Matthew better than the deacons. I didn't question much, not until that day in the grace room. He told me it was a privilege. He said only those pure of heart were brought there. The first time he asked me to kneel and pray with him, said we had to be closer than usual so God could hear better. He placed his hand on my shoulder and called it a channel for blessings. His fingers didn't move at first, just rested there. But I remember how heavy it felt, like I was pinned in place, like no prayer could lift me out. The second time he said my prayers were too distracting, said he needed to cleanse the thoughts of the flesh, especially from a girl becoming a woman. That was the word he used, woman. Even though I was just a kid with scraped knees and braids, he made me close my eyes while he touched me, told me not to open them, or else the blessing would vanish. I remember I clenched my fists so tight I left half moons in my palms. He whispered, "Don't be afraid." Eve was afraid too when God came to her in the garden. But she trusted. I wanted to run. I really did. But my legs gave out the second he shut the door. They didn't just freeze, they failed me. I backed up, tried to speak, but no words came out. He stepped close real calm, like he was delivering a blessing. "You're a vessel now, Kayla, God's chosen. This is how he fills you." I shook my head, but he grabbed my wrist, tight. His hand was cold, but his breath was hot against my cheek. When he pushed me down, I hit the arm of the chair and bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. I kicked, I screamed, I begged him to stop, but he didn't. He covered my mouth, said I had to be still, that I'd ruin the sanctity if I didn't surrender. My arms flailed, then went numb. Every part of me hurt, burned, tore. The pain was more than I knew my body could hold. I screamed under his hand till I gagged. When it was over, he looked me in the eye and said, "Now you are blessed. And don't let the devil twist this inside your head. He'll try, but you mustn't let him." I lay there after staring at the flickering candlelight on the ceiling, wondering if hell really looked any worse than this room. Then I saw it, a thin red light crawling in through the vent above the door. I couldn't walk straight for days, and I didn't cry, not once. I just stopped speaking, stopped eating, stopped being anything except quiet. Mama said I was being dramatic. "Some girls just crave attention," she snapped, slamming the Bible on the table. I wanted to tell her what happened, but what's the point of speaking truth when the only thing folks believe in is a lie wrapped in white robes? One night I told her my stomach hurt. She gave me 2 spoonfuls of castor oil and told me to pray harder. The grace room smelled like melted wax and stale breath. The candles always burned too low, never enough to see the corners. That old leather chair creaked like it didn't want to hold another secret. And him, he always wore his priest robe loose, always said it was God's will that he walk among us as humble as Christ. He called it cleansing. Said my body was a vessel too full of temptation, that pain was part of the purification. He said every mark left behind was proof that I was being saved. He'd press me down into that chair, whisper verses while I cried into my hands. Every time I said no, he just prayed louder. And when I screamed, he said it was the devil inside me fighting back. It happened again and again, each time worse than the last. My body ached for days after. I could barely walk, barely sit, barely think. He'd wipe the sweat from his forehead like he'd just finished something holy, then tell me not to speak of it, lest you lead others into sin, child. There was no heaven in that room, only blood and silence. And God, if he was there at all, never said a word. For weeks I didn't say a word. I figured maybe it was just me. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I was being punished. I read the Bible twice over that month looking for answers, but the only thing I found was that fear grows in silence, and I'd already gone too quiet. Then Ellie came. She was 9, barely up to my shoulder. Her voice in the choir was soft like wet snow, and she never smiled when she sang. I watched her one evening after rehearsal. She stared at Father Donovan, the way a rabbit looks at a hawk. Still, silent, waiting for something awful. Later in the bathroom, she tugged on my sleeve while I was washing my hands. "Kayla," she whispered. "You ever seen red light in the prayer room?" I froze. "What red light?" She bit her lips so hard I thought it might bleed. "It's there when I close my eyes, like fire, but quiet. It hurts." She didn't have to say more. That night, I sat up in bed staring at the ceiling, the moonlight slicing through my blinds like a cold blade. I thought about what he'd told me, "You're chosen." And I started to wonder how many lambs he'd led into that room, all thinking it was some holy place. I found Zoe first. She was louder, bolder, 10 years old, with a temper hot as her red curls. I cornered her behind the church after choir and asked real plain, "Did he touch you?" Her eyes snapped wide, then narrowed. "Don't talk crazy," she said. "My daddy'll whoop me if he even hears me asking." That told me enough. Lucia was harder, 11 and quiet, always clutching her rosary like it'd burn if she let go. I had to sit beside her during Sunday school, lean in slow, and whisper, "Did he ever take you to the grace room?" She didn't answer, but her hands started shaking so bad the beads clicked like wind chimes in a storm. We never said it out loud, not once, not back then, but I knew We all did. When I tried to talk to Mama, she stared through me like I wasn't there. Kayla Lynn McCarthy, don't you bring Satan into this house with those lies. Father Donovan's closer to God than any man I know. I'm not lying, I said. My voice cracked. He touched me. In that room. She slapped me so fast I barely saw it coming. My lips split on the side and the taste of copper filled my mouth. You say that again and I'll have Pastor Sam come pray the devil out of you. She locked me in my room that night. I could hear her crying through the wall real soft. Not for me, but for the sin she thought I'd committed. I wrote everything down after that. Every word he said, every moment. I didn't care if God saw me. I just needed someone to, even if it was paper. I thought maybe if I kept it all someday, someone would believe me. But for now, all I had was a notebook and 3 girls with the same hurt behind their eyes, and the red light, always that red light. Mama always said the devil worked fastest through children because we were still soft and open like wet clay. I used to think she meant other kids, bad kids, the kind who stole or talked back or skipped out on Sunday school. But after what happened to Ellie, I started to wonder if that devil she feared so much didn't look a whole lot more like the folks kneeling in the front pew than the ones stuck at the back. It started on a Tuesday, 2 days after Ellie whispered to me in the church bathroom, asking if I'd seen the red light too. By Thursday, she was gone. Not gone, just missing from choir, from school, from everywhere that wasn't locked behind her mama's wooden shed out back. I knew the place Small Dark used to store garden tools and bags of seed. I'd once hid in there during a game of hide and seek. It smelled like dirt and mildew and mouse droppings, and you could barely stand up straight inside it. That night I snuck out my window just past 10. I could see the flicker of a lantern from the side yard just faint behind the hedge. I crept around the side of their house and crouched low behind the old wheelbarrow, and there she was, Ellie, huddled in the corner of the shed, wrapped in a ratty quilt, rocking real slow like a song only she could hear. Her lip was busted. There was a line of blood dried along her cheek and something red on her hands. I couldn't tell if it was hers or not. Her mama stood in the doorway, holding a Bible in one hand and a switch in the other. I couldn't hear all the words, just the tone, sharp shaking, cruel in the way only a mother's fear can be. Quinyap Roy, she kept saying. Phai Kong Win That So Moi Te Duk. She slammed the door, shut a second later, and bolted it with a thick chain like Ellie was some kind of wild animal that might run loose if given the chance. I stayed there till the light went out. I didn't breathe much, didn't move. Just watched the darkness settle over that little shed like a second skin. Ellie didn't come to church that Sunday. Didn't come the one after either. Some folks asked where she was. Her mama just smiled and said she was fasting from the world. Nobody pushed. Nobody wanted to know more. And not one person, not one said it was to protect her. They all looked at her like she was dirty, like she'd let something in and now couldn't wash it off. Zoe's story didn't come out through whispers. It came out loud, right in the middle of the night. I was sitting by the window that faced their yard, scribbling into my notebook with a flashlight tucked beneath a sheet. That's when I heard it, screaming, not the high-pitched kind, but the deep tearing kind that's only ever made by someone who's being hurt and doesn't care who hears. Then came the slaps, wet, hard, quick, like someone hitting meat, then the buckle. The belt made a sound all its own. I leaned forward and pulled the curtain back just enough to see. Zoe was out in the cold bare knees in the dirt, arms crossed tight over her chest. Her daddy, 6 foot tall and full of beer and wrath, stood over her belt in hand. Say it again, he roared. Zoe didn't answer. So he struck her. Once, twice, again. I wanted to scream, wanted to run and bang on every door on our street, but I couldn't move. I just sat there watching through a crack in the curtain, crying so quiet I barely knew I was doing it. When it was done, he left her there. She didn't cry, not even once. Just stayed kneeling, shoulders hunched, like she'd learned to hold her pain in the way some folks learn how to sing, by being told it's the only way you'll be loved. Lucia was different. She never raised her voice, never broke rules. Her mama was the kind who wore crosses in every room of the house, stitched Bible verses into pillowcases, and kept holy water in a perfume bottle beside the kitchen sink. When I asked Lucia, real careful, if anything ever happened to her in the grace room, she didn't answer, just looked down at her hands and whispered, "Mama said it's the sin inside me, not him. He's just trying to help." That's when she told me about the ashes. The night after she came home crying from choir, her mama lit every candle in the house, knelt her down in front of the family altar, and mixed the ashes from the Sunday offering with water from the baptismal basin. Then she made Lucia drink it, said it would cleanse her, said it would make her pure again. Lucia vomited halfway through. Her mama slapped her face and poured the rest down her throat. She told me all this like she was reciting a bedtime story, voice soft, steady, resigned. I didn't cry for her. I clenched my fists instead. My anger felt hotter than any candle flame that night, hot enough to burn the whole damn town down. By the end of that week, I'd filled 12 pages in my notebook. I wrote everything: names, dates, what they said, what they did, the marks we hid, the things we couldn't forget. I didn't care if it was risky. I didn't care if Mama found it and burned it. I had to keep track of the truth because the lies were growing thicker than the fog on Sunday morning. Folks around here didn't see bruises, they saw punishment. They didn't hear screams, they heard disobedience leaving the body. They didn't see girls, they saw vessels small and sacred, easy to blame. And Father Donovan, he just smiled through it all. Smiled like he knew the storm wouldn't touch him. Smiled like he'd been doing this long enough to know that when you wear the robe, no one ever checks your hands. That night, I wrote something I didn't expect. It came out like a whisper from someplace inside me I hadn't looked at in weeks. If God's real, he's watching all this and not doing a damn thing. I stared at that line a long time, read it over and over till the words started to blur. Folks around here always said light was the surest sign God was near. Morning light through a stained glass window, candlelight during evening prayer. Even the sharp glare of a flashlight cutting through a storm was somehow holy to them, proof that he was watching, guiding, correcting. But I learned too early and too hard that light can lie just as easy as darkness, especially the kind that flickers behind a locked door. The day I hid the phone inside the organ box, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I had to pretend like I was just practicing, even though every note I played came out flat. I could feel his eyes on me from across the chapel, like he was measuring my breath, my hands, the space between my legs and the bench. When I finished the hymn, he clapped soft, like always gentle, fatherly, poisoned. The phone was cheap. Jenna helped me get it through one of her friends in town. Jenna used to be part of the same church group I was in when I was younger. She was older than me by 5, maybe 6 years. Folks said she left Eden Haven in a hurry, claimed she'd turned her back on the church. But the way I remembered it, Jenna had seen something no one else dared to name. She never said it out loud, but you could tell from her silence. She'd messaged me a month back, checking in, asking if I was all right. I didn't answer right away. I didn't know how. But after what happened to Ellie and Zoe, and the way Lucia couldn't stop shaking during Mass, I figured not answering was more dangerous than telling the truth. She replied the same night, "I believe you. Just say when." I didn't say when. I just sent her one word: soon. The organ was old. One of the pedals squeaked loud when pressed too hard, but the inside compartment where they kept spare sheet music and polish was deep and dusty. I wrapped the phone in an old choir cloth, propped it behind the stacks, and flipped on the recording feature. It only captured short clips at a time, and the camera was grainy as hell, but it was enough to catch voices. It took 3 Sundays, 3 weeks of singing hymns with my stomach in knots, 3 weeks of watching him pick who stayed behind for blessing, 3 weeks of pretending I was just another obedient lamb while rage boiled under my skin. Then one night he called Zoe. She went up quiet, didn't argue, didn't look at me. Her eyes were flat like glass right before it cracks. I stayed after told Miss Caldwell I had to clean the hymnals. I waited until the sanctuary emptied out, till the doors shut, and the floor stopped creaking. Then I slipped back to the organ and pulled the phone. I couldn't breathe watching it. Zoe's voice came first, tight shaking, then his. Don't be afraid, child. This is how your soul gets washed clean. Let go. Let the Lord in. And then her sobbing, not loud, just enough to make your bones go cold. I stopped the video halfway through. I didn't need to see more. I already knew what it would be. That night I didn't sleep. I waited until Mama nodded off in her chair, Bible slipping from her lap, like it always did when the fire got low. Then I crept to the hallway, stole her phone, and texted Jenna. She came back to Eden Haven 2 days later. We met behind the old shed near the cemetery, the place where kids used to play tag before the church took over that space for outdoor mass. She hadn't changed much, older, sure, eyes sharper, but there was still something soft in the way she looked at me, like she remembered the version of me from long ago, the version before all this. I handed her the phone without a word. She watched the clip, didn't blink once. Then she shut it off, slipped it into her coat, and said, "We're not letting this die in the dark." Problem was, dark didn't scare folks here. It was light they followed. Light and robes and hymns, and a voice that sounded like honey melting over firewood. So when Father Donovan started telling people the kids were cursed whispers about demons, about ungrateful souls twisted by sin, folks listened. He stood up during Sunday service, hands lifted high, and said, "A dark spirit has settled into our youth. It speaks in lies. It sows doubt. It seeks to rot this town from the inside out." And they believed him. He called for a cleansing, a ceremony timed with the next eclipse, which was only 2 weeks off. Said the sun disappearing behind God's shadow was a sign, a gateway to chase the devil out once and for all. People went wild with it, started fasting, lighting candles at every doorstep, donating more than they could afford. The churchyard filled with banners, prayers scrawled on bed sheets, crosses made from every branch in the county. It was like a parade for the apocalypse. And me, Zoe, Lucia, and even Ellie knew exactly who the devil in his story was. We didn't have time to wait for someone else to speak, not when the whole town was preparing to burn us in spirit, if not in name. So we started printing. Jenna helped get copies made. Paper was cheap if you knew where to go. We cut clips from the video, still images where his hand reached too far or his voice was just too soft for comfort. We typed out quotes, added dates, even matched church schedules to the footage timestamps. I remember the night we met in Lucia's backyard. It was cold, but nobody wanted to be inside. We laid everything out on a tarp, and I looked around at us 4 girls who barely had their baby teeth out before the world decided our bodies were something to steal. We put them everywhere, I said. Mailboxes, pews, choir folders, under windshield wipers. Every place they won't think to look before it's too late. Zoe nodded. Her hands were still bruised, but she held the stack like it weighed nothing. Lucia just whispered, "He said we were chosen. Maybe we are." just not the way he meant. We worked fast, left stacks under cushions, stuffed them in the hymnals behind the Psalms, dropped them in mail slots before dawn. I even snuck one into the prayer request box, figured if anyone was watching from heaven, they deserved the truth too. I didn't know who'd read them, didn't know who'd believe, but we couldn't stay quiet, not with Father Donovan holding a Bible in one hand and a match in the other. Every time we passed his picture, his posters, his face painted on banners for the Sunlight Revival, I felt something boil under my ribs. He was preparing to cleanse us. We were preparing to survive him. And somewhere between that battle of belief and proof, I figured out something that scared me more than hell ever had. Truth don't always win. Sometimes it just has to scream louder than the lie, and we were ready to scream. The sun came up slow that morning, like it knew what was coming and didn't much want to rise. I watched it from the front porch, sitting on the step with my knees hugged close, the same spot I used to play jacks before church on Sundays. It didn't feel like Sunday. It didn't feel like any regular day at all. It felt like something else had taken hold of the sky and the ground and even the air we were breathing. Something heavy. By noon, the whole town was buzzing. Folks walked down Main Street dressed in their best, men in pressed slacks, women in dresses that hadn't seen daylight since Easter. Kids ran barefoot between the pew rows, and every one of them was told to hush because today was sacred. They believed it, all of them. Father Donovan had called it a holy reckoning, said the eclipse was God's eye blinking shut for just long enough to show us who the wicked were. Said darkness would fall, not just over the earth, but into our hearts, if we didn't repent, if we didn't purify what had gone wrong. And by wrong, he meant us, me, Ellie, Zoe, Lucia. He never said our names, but we could feel it in his sermons, in the way folks stared when we passed in, how the whispers got quieter, but the looks got sharper. There was no hiding anymore. The church had set up a giant white screen across the back wall of the yard, just beneath the cross that overlooked the town. A rented LED projector buzzed faint in the sunlight, barely noticeable under all the chatter and hymn singing. Most folks figured it'd be used to display prayers, scriptures, maybe the eclipse itself. But we had other plans. I sat in the 5th row from the front, just behind the old sycamore tree that always dropped bark in July. I wore a plain white dress, same one I wore for confirmation 2 years back. On my lap was a small canvas purse with a zipper that stuck sometimes, and inside it was the USB drive Jenna had given me the night before. It held everything. The video of Zoe's cry, my voice telling what happened in the Grace Room, photos of the bruises we didn't ask for, and the faces of those who gave them. There was even a screenshot from a police complaint filed 6 years ago in another county. Different girl, same priest. But nothing ever came of it. Just disappeared into the dark. I kept my hand on that drive like it was a lifeline. Jenna sat in the back row, sunglasses on, coat zipped up, though the heat was thick enough to choke. She looked more like an outsider than I remembered. Maybe she was. Maybe she always had been. Don't flinch, she told me that morning. When the light goes out, that's your moment. That's when truth hits the hardest. So I waited. The eclipse began around 1. You could feel it before you saw it, like the warmth in the air got pulled back, like the birds stopped moving. Father Donovan stepped up to the podium with arms stretched high, white robe flowing in the wind like some holy banner. His voice rang out smooth and practiced. When the sun falls under the weight of heaven's shadow, he said, so too will the evil among us be revealed. God has chosen this hour to cleanse his house. People bowed their heads. Some wept. A few lifted their hands skyward. I kept my eyes on the screen. And then it happened. The light dimmed, not all at once, but slow, like dusk had crept in too early. A cool breeze swept through the crowd, and someone whispered, "It's starting." That's when I stood up. I walked slow, careful, like I was just another girl doing as told. I made my way to the back, plugged the USB into the projector, and hit play. It took 5 seconds before people realized what they were watching. Zoe's voice first, muffled, scared, then Father Donovan's. "Let go, child. This is how your soul is saved." Then a whimper, then a voice, small, cracked, barely above a whisper. "Please, please stop." Another rustle, another sob. Then the child's voice, again clearer this time, desperate. "Please, I want to go. Please let me go. I won't tell, I promise." The man's voice came next, soft, cold, soaked in control. "Hush now," he said. "Don't you see? This is for your soul. God sees your heart. He sent you to me." The child whimpered again, their words caught in their throat breath, shaking. "I want to go home. Please, I want my mom." There was a pause. Then the man's voice, stern, unmoved. "Your mother sent you here, child. She wants you clean, and this is how you'll be saved." The sound of movement, of pressure, of weight, and then a muffled cry, so raw, it made some in the crowd watching the video cover their ears. Jenna didn't look away. Kayla didn't blink, and the screen kept playing. The child begged again. "Stop. It hurts. Please. I don't want this. Please." And the man, calm as stone, answered, "Pain is how we cast out sin. The Lord tests those he loves." People held their breath, like maybe if they didn't move, the truth wouldn't settle in their bones. Then the sun came back like nothing happened. Light returned to the yard, to the trees, to the tops of heads, bowed not in prayer but shame. A few sobbed. Others just stared blank. And somewhere behind that silence, just past the whispers and gasps, came the sound of sirens. At first, Father Donovan stood still. But when he saw the officers coming, plainclothes badges drawn, he didn't lower his hands. He didn't surrender. He exploded. He pushed through the crowd, shouting loud enough to shake the air. "You fools! You blind, weak-hearted fools! You're letting them deceive you." People turned, confused, afraid. He pointed straight toward the children. "They came to me filled with darkness. You think this is my sin? No. It was theirs brought into God's house like rot in the roots." A few in the crowd murmured. One woman clutched her chest. Donovan's voice grew wilder. "They are witches, tainted by the devil. I laid hands on them to save them, to cleanse them. Would you rather let the devil dance through your daughters and sons while you sit quiet?" An officer reached for his shoulder. Donovan jerked away, spitting toward the grass. "I did what had to be done. God chose me to protect Eden Haven, and I will not be judged by a flock of cowards." Then Jenna stepped forward. "Stop lying," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut clear through the chaos. He turned on her eyes, lit with something between rage and delusion. You turned your back on salvation long ago," he snarled. "You let the devil use your mouth to poison others. You think you're righteous now. After all your sin." Jenna didn't flinch. "I was 13, she said, voice steady. "And you were just the same then as you are now. Only back then, no one listened." The crowd went still again. Donovan's lip curled. "Lies. All of it. They came back to tempt me, to ruin me. Look at them crying, plain innocent. But their eyes are full of filth. They wanted it. They begged me." A hush spread like smoke, and then a voice from the back, shaking but firm. "I begged you to stop." It was Ellie. She stepped forward, small fists, clenched voice barely above the breeze. "I begged you, and you said it was God." A murmur, a sob. One man collapsed onto his knees. The officers didn't wait anymore. They lunged forward and pulled Donovan back, dragging him down from the platform as he kicked and screamed. "You'll burn for this, all of you. The wrath of God will fall on this town. You're siding with demons. You're siding with darkness." He kept screaming even as they shoved him toward the gate, even as the cuffs clicked shut, even as the crowd parted like the Red Sea, not out of reverence, but disgust. And somewhere in all of it, between the rage, the shame, and the fear, Kayla realized something. The eclipse hadn't just blocked the sun. It had exposed everything that had been hidden in the light. It was quick at first, too quick for folks to react. 4 plainclothes officers pushed through the side gate. One had cuffs already drawn. People started parting like water. Some stepped back. Some stood frozen. Father Donovan stood at the front of the platform robe, still loose hands lifted in what might have been prayer or defiance. They moved in on him from both sides. That's when he shouted, "I speak for the Lord. You touch me, you touch the church itself." He took a step back, then another. When the first officer reached for his wrist, Donovan shoved him hard enough. The man stumbled sideways into a pew. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Blasphemers!" Donovan roared. "You bring poison into God's house. You are the ones who should kneel." Another officer circled behind. This time they moved together. He thrashed, twisting his arms, knocking over the chalice that still sat on the altar. It clattered down the steps, spilling the wine across the grass like blood. People screamed. One woman fainted. Children cried. "You think video tricks can undo the work of God," he spat. "Satan is clever. He knows how to lie in the voice of a child. They begged for forgiveness. They begged to be made whole." Jenna stood from the back. "They begged you to stop," she said, loud, clear. His eyes locked onto her, wild now, red at the edges. He hissed. "You turned away from salvation. You were broken long before you left this place." 2 more officers came from behind. One tried to hook his arm, but Donovan spun and elbowed him square in the jaw. Blood on both sides. "I am his vessel," he screamed. "You cannot imprison what is holy." And then they tackled him. 4 against 1, they forced him down, chest to dirt, arms pinned behind his back. Even then, he didn't stop shouting, didn't stop preaching. "This town will burn for what it's done to me. The angels will weep when they see what you've become." They dragged him up by the elbows, dirt smeared across his robe, spit at the corner of his mouth. But even cuffed, even beaten, his head stayed high, eyes bright with something that looked too much like triumph. And behind all the yelling, the panic, the broken faith bleeding out across the field, the sky just kept getting brighter. It started with one girl. Not me, not Ellie, not Zoe or Lucia. Just a girl from the back row. I didn't even know her name. She stood up during homeroom hands, shaking but voice firm, and said she wasn't going to Sunday class anymore. Not with what had happened. Not after what she saw. No one laughed. No one told her to hush. Next day, a boy said he wouldn't be attending confession. The next week, 2 more girls quit the choir. Then a boy from the basketball team told his teacher that he'd been blessed by Father Donovan 5 years ago, and he didn't feel right ever since. They came slowly at first, a trickle, like drops before the downpour, but the storm came anyway. Some cried, some yelled, some spoke soft like they were trying not to break. But the words kept coming, not just about Father Donovan, but about other hands, other words, other rooms that were supposed to be safe and weren't. Some stories were old, some fresh, all real, and none of us were quiet anymore. We didn't meet in hiding now. We met in the open, in classrooms, front porches, the edge of the playground. We formed a group, just kids, no adults. Someone called us the quiet ones at first, but we changed that real quick. We called ourselves what we were, the kids who ain't quiet anymore. And somehow that name stuck. People started listening, some because they were scared, some because they were guilty, most because they didn't know what else to do. The silence in Eden Haven had cracked wide open, and no one could pretend anymore. A month later, the town held a service, but it wasn't in the church. That place had stayed locked since the eclipse, the cross on the roof now leaning slightly left like it didn't know what to believe in anymore. They set up folding chairs in the field behind the library. No altar, no choir, just a mic and a wooden stand. Folks brought flowers, not lilies or roses, but wildflowers picked from their own yards, messy, real, and bruised from the wind. There were no priests, no hymns, just names, names of kids. Some still lived here. Some had moved away long ago. Some were buried in the cemetery up on Harlan Hill. Their stories were read by the ones who survived, or by their friends, or by their mothers with trembling hands and tearless eyes. When my turn came, I stood in the middle of the open field and felt the wind crawl up my sleeves. I didn't wear white that day. I wore denim and boots, same ones I'd worn the night we pasted truth under every pew. I held my speech in one hand, but when I opened my mouth, I didn't read it. I just spoke. Some folks say kids don't remember much, that we forget the bad things and grow out of the pain. But I remember everything. I remember the leather chair, the smell of candles, the sound of the lock turning. I remember what he said. I remember how it felt. And I remember who believed him instead of me. I paused. No one moved. We don't need more prayers. We need you to listen. And after you listen, we need you to believe, not just us, but every kid that's too scared to speak yet, every kid sitting quiet in the pews, thinking what happened to them was their fault. It wasn't, and it never was. I looked up at the sky not because I expected anything from it, but because I needed a place to rest my eyes. We are not the shame of this town. We are its voice. I stepped back. Nobody clapped, but I didn't need them to. The silence that followed wasn't hollow. It was heavy with truth. That was enough. Father Donovan's trial made the news every week. The charges stacked up like firewood before winter, not just from us, but from other towns, other states, other names long buried. His lawyers tried to say he was mentally unstable. He quoted scripture in court, told the judge he was anointed by God, said he was chosen to bear the sin of others so they might be spared. But this time, nobody bowed. Even the ones who still wore crosses on their necks turned their backs when he spoke. He looked smaller in the courtroom, not frail, just stripped, like someone who finally realized the robe didn't make the man and the word couldn't cover blood. The verdict came down hard. He was sentenced to decades in federal prison. And even as they took him away, he tried to bless the room, reached out and whispered, "May God forgive your blindness." But no one closed their eyes. No one bowed their heads. They just watched him leave like a bad storm, finally rolling out of town. Not with fear, not with hate, but with a kind of quiet that comes after long pain. Not peace, but something close. The town didn't heal fast. Some churches closed. Some reopened with new leaders and open doors. A few families moved. Some refused to talk about it. Others couldn't talk about anything else. But the kids kept meeting. We added more chairs, brought notebooks. One girl made bracelets out of old hymnal strings. A boy started drawing what he felt and pinned them to the school bulletin board. We didn't hide anymore. We weren't just victims. We weren't just survivors. We were kids, still kids. But we were loud now. I still write in my journal sometimes. Not every day, but when I do, the pages don't feel like they'll catch fire anymore. Tonight, I wrote something I'd been holding back since that first day in the grace room. It wasn't scripture. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't even pretty. It was just this. If you ever feel like giving up, remember you once stood up against a man they called a saint and you won. If you're still reading, then maybe some part of you already knows this story wasn't just mine. Maybe it never was. I wrote it for every child who sat through pain they couldn't name, for every girl who kept quiet because her mother wouldn't believe her, for every boy told that real men don't cry, for every whisper smothered by hymns, for every scar hidden under Sunday clothes, and for every parent, I beg you, listen. Listen before it's too late, because monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they stand at the front of the church, wear robes, and smile with open palms. Ask your children what they're afraid of. Then believe them. Don't pray the truth away. Don't shame it quiet. Don't let silence become your legacy. And to anyone out there who still thinks they have no voice, you do. You always did. You are not broken. You are not to blame, and your story is not too small to matter. Speak, even if your voice shakes, even if no one listens the first time. Speak anyway, because truth has a way of surviving when nothing else does. And the more of us who speak it, the louder it gets. We were the kids who weren't supposed to say a word, but we did, and the world cracked open. Now it's your turn. Don't stay quiet. Don't look away. Don't let it happen again. Not in your house, not in your town, not under your watch. We already lost too many to silence. Let this be the last time.